some people get that satisfaction from their jobs. Some people's hobbies are their jobs. So I know it's all kind of a jumbled thing, but the main hobbies I'm going to be talking about today are art, painting, essentially drawing, bouldering and rock climbing, reading, and maybe a little bit about writing and a little bit about ASMR. Okay, well, let's get right into it. So first, I'll talk a little bit about art. I do a lot of different kinds of art. I've been in art classes since the 7th grade, and I'm 26 now. I wasn't so into painting in high school and middle school. I was pretty bad at it, actually. In high school, I drew a lot and I used colored pencils and stuff, and I built up my strength in color. Painting is obviously all about color. And then in college, I took a oil painting class, which opened my eyes to oil painting and how complicated yet rewarding it was. I keep talking about doing an entire ASMR video about oil painting, but every time I start filming it, I get overwhelmed, so someday I will release that. Brush. So this is a gigantic brush. In my oil painting class, we had to work with a minimum canvas size of 4 foot by 4 foot, which is gigantic. It's encouraged to work large as a beginner in oil painting, which is advice my teacher gave me, but it's not so practical because a canvas that size is $60–70. A brush this size, $60. I'm not even kidding. A high quality large brush can be $80. Art is expensive, especially painting. Drawing is very accessible, but oil painting in particular, I think, has kind of an elitist status in the art world. I asked my oil painting teacher if I could do acrylic instead. The name of the class was painting, it wasn't oil painting. So I asked him if I could use acrylic, and he was like, no, we don't use acrylic as serious artists, which isn't true, but I brought a bunch of brushes here. So let's look at the other ones. I wanted to show off this one though, because it's my biggest one and I spent a lot of money on it. You can see paint all over it. Here's a more normal sized brush. So I use these brushes for both oil and gouache, which is the other paint medium I've been experimenting with lately. Oil is kind of an ordeal to set up because you need a glass palette and then you need to scrape off with a razor after you're done. You need mediums, which are little, I'll show you in a second, but oil painting, you don't use water, you use other oils essentially to help thin out the paint and spread it around. I'm sure most people have tried acrylic painting in their life, and you know how you can add a little bit of water to your canvas or your brush or the paint, and you can spread it around easier. With oil, it is not water soluble, so you have to use other oil. size will run you about $14. And when I started this oil painting class, you needed like 10 of this sized paint tubes. It's a very expensive. You can make things as expensive or cheap as you want, but for this particular class, all my paints that I had to buy from scratch, everything ended up costing me like $200. And I was so broke in college, I was like, why am I doing this to myself? It does last a really, really long time though. So yeah, this is oil paint. You don't have to buy them in tubes this big. I bought my main colors in tubes this big, and then smaller colors that I knew I would use often but didn't want to mix myself, such as permanent green light. I bought in a smaller tube. So things like very specific color yellows and very bright blues, I recommend getting little tubes like this, and then big tubes of your yellow, your blue, your red, your black, your white, and a couple other ones you can Google online. Basic oil or acrylic color set, and they'll tell you the exact names of the types of colors you should buy. Theoretically, you could get away with just black, white, and your 3 primary colors, but I'm not a fan of mixing every single color you want, even though it does make you get good really quickly. Art teachers love that exercise. Create colors from just your primary colors. So let me show you what gouache is. So I bought tubes of very small gouache, and that's because they are very similar to watercolor, and you don't need big tubes of it like you need for oil. How would I describe gouache? It's a mix between watercolor and acrylic. It is a lot more opaque than watercolor, but it's not as thick as acrylic. I'm really enjoying gouache. I had no experience with it, but I see so many paintings that are beautiful and like illustrations. They're really good for illustration work, and you can work a lot smaller. So I'm going to show you a couple of my gouache paintings. Keep in mind, I am pretty new at it, so okay. This is the size of paper that I normally work with. Whenever you're working with any water-based paint, because you're using so much water, you don't want your paper to wrinkle. So what you do is you look for the weight of the paper. I don't know if you can see here, but this is 140-pound paper. I go as high as you can afford. I think there's a minimum of I think 140 is kind of the minimum for watercolor. I'm not that experienced with watercolor, but the art store employee recommended me this brand, Stonehenge. Let's find a painting. So this is the first ever gouache painting I made. It's a beach, and I took the picture for reference when I was visiting my friends in Australia a year or 2 ago. I think 2 years now. This really beautiful beach outside of Sydney called Jarvis Bay. How I wipe it off, and then at the very end, after you're done painting, you peel it off and it gives it a very clean look. Here is my most recent painting. Whoa. It's of a casita in New Mexico that I stayed at, which was really beautiful. I love adobe houses so much. And the turquoise blue door and ladder was so striking to me when it's an Airbnb, I forgot to mention, that I stayed at. Yeah, it's beautiful, and so I decided to take a picture and paint it. I have no idea if the camera is doing it justice. Let's see. Okay. I don't have my oil paintings here with me. They're gigantic, 4 foot by 4 foot. Though I think I need to post them on my art Instagram someday. I did post one. It's the picture of me actually in this dress, standing next to it. That was one of my oil paintings. I haven't done oil painting in a while. Like I said, it's kind of time consuming, but I really want to get back into it. So I'm going to do a few more brush sounds and then move on to the next hobby. This is a rounded brush, and the other square one you saw is a flat tip. You use them for different reasons. These are very good for watercolors because it picks up a lot of water. So if you wanted to get into art, specifically painting, my advice to you would be to either A, take a class. A lot of cities offer very cheap art classes. You can find a program. There will be nothing better than being in, having a dedicated time that you have to go and paint once a week. Unless you have crazy self-discipline, getting started, that'll really help you. Just having something, like you paid for a class, you're gonna go, you're gonna meet people who are also interested in art. You know, it's like, how do adults make friends? Honestly, it's things like this, like going to classes and finding mutual hobbies. So I recommend an art class. But there's also so many YouTube videos out there. For supplies, if you're wanting to get into painting for the first time, I would start with watercolor or acrylic. They're cheaper, they come out of your clothes. You don't have this entire setup. I just remembered, let me show you what an oil paint medium looks like. So, refined linseed oil. As you can see, it's kind of gross, but this is what you use with oil paint instead of water. Not necessarily even only linseed oil. You could use I can't remember, there's like 100 different kinds of oils. You can even mix and match them, and different oils will give your paint different qualities, such as make it shinier, make it more matte. So depending on your style, you can even go further beyond the paint and the brushes and the canvas. You can, you know, have a lot of flexibility with the medium. Oh, that's a good sound. You have a lot of creative ability, like things you can do with the medium also. As I was saying, a class. You can find YouTube videos to get started. Try to far drawing circles and squares and shading them in my experience. You have to find a passion for it, and then the practice will follow. So if you're really into cats, draw a bunch of cats. Just looking at something and drawing it, or even in your imagination drawing it, drawing a cartoon version of it. Just anything that gets you interested in drawing, just draw it. Who cares if it's embarrassing or if you're bad? That's the only way to get good. As for where to buy your paint, I can only say that I would urge you to buy locally. It is a little more expensive, but it is good for your community. It's good. I think it's just more ethical rather than Amazon is going to be cheaper and you can read reviews, but your local art store, I just encourage you to support it. I think they're really important. Art stores also sometimes do offer classes as well. Okay, that's it for art. Next is bouldering, and this is going to be kind of gross, but this is what a shoe looks like in bouldering. Bouldering is very similar to rock climbing, and I do both. Bouldering is where you have no ropes and you climb up a rock, and if you fall, you land on a very thick crash pad. But indoor bouldering gyms are also extremely popular. That's how most people get started. That's how I got started. And I love bouldering gyms because the community there is just my kind of people, like outdoorsy, friendly. They're usually eco-conscious. They're like, in my experience, and it's also a hobby that gets your arms, I'm cracking, very strong, and it's fun. It's a fun way to stay in shape, and you just kind of feel like a monkey, and you feel, it's just very fun to scramble up a wall. You feel like a kid again, even though it's pretty scary. Fear is the number one thing that holds me back in bouldering. I'm getting better at it, but when I'm at the top and I have to lunge or do a pull-up somehow to get to the very last hold, the very last thing you grip before you finish the climb, I get too scared and I'll just climb back down. It's a problem, and I'm trying to get less scared, but so I have an entire video dedicated about bouldering and rock climbing, and if I can figure it out, I'll put a little thingy, a little link or something. But I explain in more detail what it is and how to get into it. But basically, you can just Google bouldering gym, find one when they're open, and you can normally rent shoes there. And for your first few times, you don't need chalk for your hands because you're not going to be climbing that much, I'm assuming, unless you're very naturally athletic. But the next few times, if you like it, you need to buy chalk, which comes in the normal chalk that you see where you can like break it and crumble it and it's dust, or liquid chalk, which is chalk mixed with alcohol, so it's like hand sanitizer and it dries on your hand as normal chalk. I was getting really good at bouldering until COVID hit, and then we had, obviously the gyms closed down and all my arm muscles went away, so I'm still working on trying to stay fit. So that is bouldering. The other supporting you with the rope through their harness, and the rope goes up through the person climbing's harness. So if they fall, the person on the ground, their weight will stop them from falling. So let me show you what a harness looks like. So this goes around your waist, and these go around your legs, and the rope, the hooks through this. Rock climbing is a lot more complicated than I'm explaining, so if you're curious, go check out that other video of mine. If you want to get into rock climbing, I recommend finding a Facebook group of rock climbers in your area and trying to tag along with a group of them. I would try bouldering before you try rock climbing, just to build up your arm muscles and kind of have an idea of how to balance your body when you're climbing up a rock. Also, if you're gonna go with friends or something, I highly recommend you buy a harness first. Nobody wants to be taking off their harness and handing it to you and you putting it on and then hooking up all your ropes. So it would be courtesy for you to have your own harness if you're seriously considering getting into rock climbing. Rope and carabiners and things like that is more easy to borrow when you're with a group of people, but this will run you about $60, I think. I've been outdoor rock climbing about 4 times now, I think, and it's really fun. It's super nice to be outside. You're almost always with friends. It's just really a cool sport, and it's, like I said, a really nice way to stay in shape and be outside, and I'm a big fan of it. Also, your local REI and maybe your Dick's Sporting Goods probably has climbing classes too. I know my local REI did, and you just pay and have them show you how to hook up all your gear, how to be safe, how to find routes that are your skill level, things like that. So, but like I mentioned, I would probably start with bouldering. Bring a couple of your friends and go to a gym and just, have fun, be goofy, and know that nobody there is judging you. I went to a gym like 3 times a week, and I would see so many types of people there, all skill levels. I would see old ladies there trying to climb and just very slowly going up and taking it really easily, and nobody was like, it's a very friendly community. So that's what I have to say about bouldering and rock climbing. If you have questions on how to start, I'll try to answer in the comments. Next is reading. Reading is probably my most time-consuming hobby. I don't know if that's the right word. I've put the most hours into reading. It's a very common hobby, obviously. I have many books, many videos relating to books on my channel. And it's something I'm very passionate about. If you're somebody who wants to get back into reading, my advice to you would be to read something fun. Don't try to pick up a classic. Find a young adult book that you used to love. Read it again. My stomach is growling. Google book recommendations for, fantasy, for thriller. Tap into what you like and start from there to kind of get back into the swing of things. It is really a habit that you build. If I go a long time without reading, it is so hard for me to pick up a book again. But if I try to read every other day or also, downloading the Kindle app or the Libby app on your phone is just, just as you're still reading. I understand wanting to use a real book, but if you're trying to get back into reading, or if you want to be able to read on your phone while your partner is sleeping next to you, use your phone, use your tablet. Or if you're somebody who has a long commute, try Audible or some other kind of audiobook recording and listen to books. It's still building that exercise in your head, and you're still enjoying stories and building your vocabulary and learning to visualize. Reading is so good for your brain. Another thing I recommend is reading the book version of your favorite movie. That'll help you get back into it, or start reading if you've never really been a reader. For example, if you liked Jurassic Park, I loved the Jurassic Park book. It's just different enough that it's fun to read, but it still has the premise that you're very comfortable with. Same with The Martian. If you like science, check out The Martian. If you like fantasy, try a young adult fantasy first. Something a little shorter and more jam-packed. I'm talking a lot. What else can I say about reading? I read pretty often. I've been reading pretty voraciously since I was a little girl. I read the Harry Potter books when I was in first or second grade. And then just kept consuming, and it's just so much fun. If you're looking to tie reading into art, or movies into art, draw fan art. Draw what you think a character would look like, or the character's house, or draw a sword from the book. Making things fun is so important. Don't try to make things more difficult than they need to be for you. That will come naturally with time as you build up these hobbies. My favorite books of all time, I would say, are East of Eden by John Steinbeck, The Lord of the Rings, of course, and I would say maybe The Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver. I have many other favorite books. It just depends what mood I'm in sometimes on what are my favorite. Sometimes I'm in a year of my life where I'm only reading fantasy, and then my favorites look a lot different. But I would say those are pretty consistently ones that I think of that are my favorite books. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about writing. If you read a lot, or if you enjoy reading, you can write. I promise. I know you probably think you can't write, but if you read, you can write. It'll take practice to get good, but you'll be better than you think you are if you consume a lot of books. It'll surprise you how easily a lot of things come when it comes to writing. I think of a book idea every other week, and I'll write it down, and I have journals and journals of book ideas. The furthest I've gotten along is this one young adult fantasy that got about 70,000 words in, and then I stopped. It's the endless struggle of finishing projects like that, but in my life goal, that's dramatic, one of my life goals or bucket list items is to write a book. So I have journals like this had so much fun in my life reading fan fictions. And if you write them, you're getting better at writing, and it's super fun. You have this world already made for you, characters already made for you. All you're doing is practicing and having fun. Highly recommend it. I love this journal with the lemons and the peaches and the oranges. Outside of writing fiction or nonfiction, journaling is really, really good for you. I don't do it religiously or anything, but anytime I'm feeling overwhelmed, I definitely journal about it. I wouldn't say it's improving your writing, but it is improving your brain. And it's always kind of cool to go back and read old journal entries and see where you're at. I think it helps you process things and figure things out, and even realize new insights and things like that about a situation. Or venting, if you can't afford therapy, try journaling. Buy a nice journal and a nice pen and just keep it by your bedside. And don't be strict about what you put in it. Use it for lists, use it for drawings. That's another advice I have for art. If you buy a sketchbook, don't treat it like, I need my sketchbook to look good. Treat it like no one is ever going to see it except for you. And just put everything you can think of in there. Ugly drawings, experiments, have fun with it. Don't take it too seriously. Lastly, I want to talk about my final hobby, which is ASMR. I am so happy that I am having the opportunity to do this and to try to, see if I can do it for a living, because I love ASMR so much. Unironically, I don't know why I said unironically, but I have been watching ASMR for almost 8 years now. It saved me in college. It saved me from insomnia and anxiety, and I've made so many friends, and ASMR is just this cool subculture on the internet that isn't that popular yet. It's popular now, but not compared to, when I tell people I do ASMR, most of them don't know what it is, or they've only been oh, is that the videos where the dogs eat grapes? And I'm like, yes and no. But it's really cool to be a part of something like this. The internet is a crazy place, and I'm so happy I found this little niche of it. If you want to try to, if you're watching this, you're probably already into ASMR, and how to get into something is very easy. Just, click recommended videos. But if you want to start your own ASMR channel, others have talked about this before, but my basic advice to you, just start. I know that's hard to say, or easy to say, but you're probably going to be like, I can't start until I have lights and a nice camera and a nice microphone. That's not true. It's not true. You can use a webcam or your phone, and you can buy a Blue Yeti microphone, which is something even really popular artists use. It's a very good microphone. I got mine used on Facebook Marketplace for only $50. So you can start with just your phone, a USB Blue Yeti microphone, and iMovie. ASMR is so forgiving. Some videos that are the most popular videos are really lo-fi. Anything can become popular. ASMR bartender videos. People love watching things where the person knows what they're talking about. I've noticed. I love videos like that. So yeah, that's my little rant on if you want to try to start a channel. I encourage you. It's fun. You know, it might never be super successful, but it's, you know, you're getting better at video editing, you're getting better at marketing yourself, and you know, it's a fun experiment, you know, or any kind of YouTube channel for that matter. I don't want to talk too much about this just because, like I said, it's been talked about so many times. GB ASMR has an entire video on how to get started as an ASMR artist, so check that video out. It'll be more detailed, but that is all for this video. Those were my main hobbies. Like I said, I think hobbies are really important. I think if you can't really think of any hobbies that you have, that's totally fine. I would just maybe, I only want to say this if you want a hobby, but I encourage you to try one, to start one new. And there are so many guides online for how to get started. The internet is an incredible resource.